One thing that's not included in this prototype is the rules reference cards, which are this size, but they have the rules condensed into little flashcards for you to refer to without having to keep this nearby and always opening the instructions. I don't have that today, and so whereas you might have a quicker time referring to your rules, I'm going to be using the instruction booklet. To set up the game, as we talked about before, each person's going to take a turn choosing a hole. As much as possible, I like to give people an even chance of choosing a hole. Now, how many holes you've chosen determines how many tokens you're going to get. My general rule is per 3 holes that are being played, you will start with 1 chain token and 2 bag tokens. So if we were playing 3 holes, that's what I would start with. But if we were playing 6 holes, I'd start with 2 chain tokens and 4 bag tokens. And if you were playing with 9 holes, you'd start with 3 chain tokens and 6 bag tokens. If you're playing with 18, feel free to just reload up to the max after you get to 9. You can also choose whether or not you're going to be playing with course condition cards. They are another thing to consider, and you do not have to play with them. I think for the first game or two that you play, consider not playing with them. If you're playing with your family, with some younger children, you may even consider not playing with the wind. Let me go over the anatomy of a flight path and how those work as well. So, can you see this? Is that showing up okay?
Yep.
So, on every flight path, you're going to have a letter. That's going to be A, M, or D for approach, mid-range, or driver. That's not super important for the gameplay, but it gives you an idea of the distance that they're meant to go. Approach discs have no wind adjustments on them. They're meant for controlled shots. The wind will not affect those. Mid-range throws have 1 blue outlined hex for a wind adjustment hex, and drivers have 2. The idea being that the longer of a throw you're trying to make, the more opportunities for variance in your end of shot placement. And that's all going to come down to what the wind is doing at the time that it gets to that blue hex. By default, you're placing the letter of the flight path on the place that you're throwing from. And that could be from the front or the back of the T-pad. You'll also see that there are the words BH and FH on the flight paths. That indicates that you're throwing a backhand throw or a forehand throw. I know the opposite would be true if you were left-handed like me, but I couldn't, that's just how it is on the tokens. There is an optional rule you can play called throw dominance. And what that means is that you would declare whether you're a backhand dominant player or a forehand dominant player. And anytime you're throwing your non-dominant hand, take 1 power, 1 distance off of the flight path that you're throwing. So if you were throwing a non-dominant throw, your throw would start here and not here. One of the neat things about these transparent flight path tokens is that they can be flipped over. So if you need to throw for a different shape, just turn it over. As long as all of the hexes line up with the hexes on the hole card, it's a valid throw. So that's a throw. That's a throw. That's a throw. And, you know what? Even that's a throw. You are allowed to have your flight path go off the grid and out of the map. Just make sure it's coming back by the end of the throw. You'll see some symbols on the flight path. We discussed how the blue outline is a wind adjustment hex. Now, there are symbols at the end of every flight path. On this one, you'll see bushes and medium-sized rocks. What that's saying is this flight path will not interact with bushes or medium-sized rocks until here and onward. On this one, you're seeing grass and small rocks. So your flight path is going to miss and not interact with grass or small rocks until here. That's what you need to remember. And just to be clear, you could still interact with a bush and a medium rock over here because it's now low enough in its flight path that it could hit those things. The last thing to cover is the L's and H's. Those are only relating to trees. So trees take up 2 hexes on the board. There's the trunk and the branches. The trunk is low, the branches are high. So if your flight path is low when it's on a trunk hex, well, then your disc is going to interact with the tree. But if it's low on a branch hex, it's going to fly under the branches. Now the inverse is true of the H. If your disc is high when it passes over branches, it's going to interact with the tree. But if your disc is high when it's over top of a tree trunk, it's going to pass over the trunk. What that's going to let you do is figure out whether you missed a trunk or hit the trunk. So in this situation, let's talk about this. So see how, can you zoom in on this, love? So in this situation, it's high on a trunk, and so it's going to miss it. If it was low on a trunk, it's going to interact. And that's how the high and low works, period. We're going to go more into what you're seeing on the hole card now. So the hole card is going to tell you the par. It's going to be 3, 4, or 5. You're generally going to see out of bounds markers around the perimeter of the hole. And you're going to see a variety of obstacles and the different starting places that are your T-pads. This is water. This is tall grass. That is a bush. These are small rocks. That is a medium-sized rock. These are large rocks. There's a tree. Yeah, there's a bunch of obstacles, man. There's the yellow area around the basket. This is the area where you can begin to putt rather than throw with the flight path. And there's an area that is not yellow right around the basket. That is what we call the tap-in circle. So that's an area where you will not have to throw to get it in, but it is just going to take that one extra stroke. And of course we have the glowing basket in the middle of the yellow circle on each hole. All right, let's start talking about how to take a turn. So I'm going to demonstrate starting the game. I am a single player, but I'll talk through it as though we were playing with multiple players, okay? So I'm going first. In advanced rules, the player with the highest score may choose a course condition card that will apply to the hole. And each card can only be used once per game. But in this situation, we're going to call it the first hole, and so no course condition card would be chosen. So my job as the first player is to choose, I have to choose a throw. I get to choose any one of these 3 T-pads and any one of those flight paths over there. So I'm just looking over here. I don't know what the wind is doing yet because that's determined after I commit to my first throw. So I'm probably going to choose something with a little less distance and try and set myself up for a good second throw. I can choose the front or the back of the T-pad. I can choose any direction. I can flip it over. You know, now that I think about it, this is a really safe throw. So I'm looking at it thinking, okay, not too much can go wrong here. I commit to this throw by saying throw in. So at this point, I'm going to spin for the course wind. That direction of the course wind applies to all players for the duration of this hole. So now I'm going to follow my flight path forward, resolving every space at a time. I'm going to get to my wind adjustment hex, roll the chains dice for wind strength of 1 up this direction. So everything is going to blow 1 in this direction, and then carry on. Nothing in my way, nothing in my way. I land right here. I'm going to take my 10-sided dice and change it from 0 to a 1, recording my first throw in this game. If we were playing a multiplayer game, I'm going to take this and put it on my player profile card. No one else is allowed to use this flight path for their tee shot. Everyone else is going to throw their tee shot knowing the wind, and once everyone has finished throwing their tee shots, we are all going to take our tee pad flight path, put it back in the holder, and now for every other shot, all flight paths are available to all players for the rest of the hole. So, I'm lying 1. I know the wind is blowing up this direction. I should find a way through this gap. I know that if the wind blows me this way, I'm going to hit the trees over here, so I'm probably going to need something more stable. So let me choose an overstable driver. Let's see if I can get there. I'm going to throw straight ahead. I could throw any direction, but I really like the shape of this. I'm going to just move this for the ease of measuring my shot. Lining everything up. That all looks lined up. I like that. I'm trying to think of what I could possibly hit. I suppose if the wind was really bad, it could blow me up to this tree. I'm playing as the sniper, so before I declare my throw, I'm going to declare this single tree as one that I will not hit this throw. So I commit to my throw. I say throwing. Let's follow this up. Crossing over the water. We'll get to the rock. Again, we don't interact with that rock because we're high enough up until this point in our flight path, but we are on a wind adjustment hex. I am going to roll the dice. That is a blue. I am going to spend a bag token to adjust the roll of this outcome by 1 to a yellow. So now I'm going to adjust this in this direction by 1, and we're going to carry on our flight path. I'm going to come up to here. I get to my next wind adjustment hex, and as we know, I can spend a chain token to decide the outcome of a chains dice roll before rolling it. I'm going to change it to a red. And now that wind adjustment is going to blow 1, 2. And I'm going to finish my flight path right there. Now this is a driver. We're going to check, can I chain in with that driver? What does that look like? I want you to have a quick look here. Chaining with a driver is rolling 2 6-sided dice, and these are the different outcomes. So I'm going to need a 10 to 12 to chain in with that driver shot. Let's roll those dice. I have already spent a chain and bag token on this throw. I cannot use any more of them, so this is all coming down to luck. We rolled a 9, and in that situation, I land on the basket hex. So a huge second shot and a tap in for a par. If this was my score, -2, I would have left it right where it is because I scored 3 on a par 3. If I had done that in 2, I would have gone back 1 more to 3 under par. And that is essentially how you'd play this game. If I had gotten a 2 on this, I would have earned back a token to put in my bag, and we go on to the next hole. Turn order being decided by who has the lowest score. And that's how you play this game. At the end of all holes, the person with the lowest score wins. Let's talk about obstacles. With tall grass, Tallgrass is going to stop your disc on this hex. If you're throwing from the tallgrass, you're going to move the flight path back 1 hex, and you get to decide whether the new first hex is high or low. So with tallgrass, if I was to make this throw, I'm going to get caught up here before I finish my flight path. So my disc is going to land 1 short. If I'm throwing from tallgrass, which I am on this throw, I'm not getting to make that full flight. I'm going to lose the first space of my flight path. Small rocks also interact on that hex. If you were to interact with small rocks, you're going to figure out which direction the disc ricochets and how far it ricochets. Roll a yellow, that's 1. And so we take a look at the wind spinner here. It's pointing down this way, end by 1. So it's going to ricochet like that, and then your disc will finish its flight path. In a situation where you landed on the tall rocks, for example, your disc can come to rest on tall rocks without any consequence, but when you throw from those, you're going to lose the first space of your flight path. So it would be as though you're throwing 1 distance shorter, and that's how tall rocks work. With bushes, they interact on this hex or afterwards, so this hex or this hex. With bushes, your disc will stop too short of it finishing its full flight path. And if you're throwing from bushes, you lose the first 2 of the distance of your flight path. So let's have a look. If I'm throwing from here, let's imagine the wind. Let's just imagine that we're going to ignore the wind for now. We're going to get to this space, and our disc is going to stop short on that bush. And now, if we're throwing this next throw, you're going to lose the first 2 distance of your flight path, and you're going to choose whether this new first hex is high or low. Medium rocks are they follow the same rules as the bush. However, when you interact with it, it's a ricochet. So in an example like this, we may interact with the rock. We're going to spin for the ricochet and roll for the strength of the ricochet. Oh, sorry. Rolling a 1. So down this direction, strength of 1. It's going to come to here and then finish its flight path. If you had landed on that rock, any flight path you choose, you're going to lose the first 2 distance on that flight path. So you'll be throwing this shape instead of this shape. So again, trees take up 2 hexes, 1 for the trunk, 1 for the branches. Trunks interact on low, and branches interact on high. If we were to make this throw, you'll see that the disc is high over the trunk and low over the branches. So I missed this tree completely and have a chance to chain in. In this situation, I'm low and on a trunk, so I'll interact. Or in this example, I'm high on a branch and I'll interact. When you interact with the tree, a few different things can happen, and they're all determined by a 6-sided dice. A 6 means you will clear the tree. There is no interaction with the tree. A 5 means your flight path is going to be shortened by 1. So in this example, if I was to interact with the tree here and roll a 5, this is now gone, and this will be the final spot of my flight path. If you rolled a 4, your flight path is shortened by 2. So in that exact example, if you were to roll a 4 here, these 2 are gone. This is the end of your flight path. If you were to roll a 3, you get a ricochet. So you're going to figure out which direction, the strength of that ricochet, 1, and it's going to push it up there, and then continue its flight path to here. If you roll a 1 or a 2, you're going to land on the trunk hex. So in this situation, if you roll a 1 or 2 here, your disc's going to land right there. There's no penalties for starting your throw on the trunk or branch hex of a tree. Large rocks take up 2 hexes on the board, one for the base of the rock and one for the top of the rock. There's no circumstance where your disc hits the base of a rock and has any chance to do anything other than stop and land 1 back from the direction it was going. So in this example, you're going to hit the base of that rock and land 1 back. That is the end of your throw. However, there are scenarios where you spend a chain token and throw a hyzer bomb, and you can throw over those large rocks with an approach disc. You can pass behind the top of a large rock. You actually won't interact with it if it's on the top area there. So in this example, this passes behind the top of that tall rock, behind the top of that tall rock, and will come to rest on that medium rock. With out of bounds, if you were to throw out of bounds off of the tee pad, let's say we threw something like this. Let's say you came to rest outside of the out of bounds off the tee pad, you're going to proceed to the drop zone. So your next throw is going to be from the drop zone. However, if it's not off the tee pad, then it's going to be from the point of entry, or POE. So in this situation, we look on this hex. This is where I left in bounds. This is where I went out of bounds. And so if I threw this, I would take a penalty stroke, and my next throw would be from the point of entry of out of bounds. So I'd be throwing from there. Water behaves very similar to out of bounds. If you're throwing off the tee pad and you literally come to rest in the water, you're going to proceed to the drop zone. Let's imagine this was my throw. I thought it'd be fine. This is the wind. I rolled a red for strength, and the whole thing adjusted up to, and I end up landing in the water. I'm going to take that penalty stroke, and my next throw will be from one of these spaces on the drop zone. If I was not throwing off the tee pad, say from here, and I wound up landing in the water, I'm going to go back to my point of entry into the water with a penalty stroke. So my next throw will be from the tall grass here. So hazards such as sand or bark mulch, if your disc lands in them, you're going to take 1 penalty stroke and continue to play from where the disc landed. So in this example here, we've got sand. In this one, we've got bark mulch. If somehow, you were to make your throw and you had landed in the sand, you're just going to add another stroke on top of the one you would have already taken and continue as normal. So mandatories, or mandos, are obstacles that you have to throw on a mandatory side of them to continue the hole. If you pass through them or on the wrong side of them, you're going to take a penalty stroke and head to the drop zone. So in this scenario, I have gone through a mando, and it doesn't matter what happens over here. That is a miss. I'm going to take a penalty stroke, and my next throw is going to be from the drop zone. If somehow, magically, you manage to land on the mandatory hex, it's totally possible. You can throw from there. You have not missed the mando. However, you're going to lose the first 2 spaces of your flight path, because what we're imagining is that you are standing in a really awkward position trying to throw past that mando, and you've lost a lot of power. So if this was your next throw, you're losing the first 2 spaces of your flight path. Course wind blows your disc and flight path token off course, and happens whenever your disc reaches a wind hex during flight. You determine course wind by spinning for the direction And at the time of a wind adjustment, you're going to roll the chain dice for strength, which could be 1, 0, red for 2. You spin for this when the first player off the tee pad commits to their throw, not before, but after. So if I was throwing this, and I said I'm throwing, at this point, we're going to spin the dice, spin the spinner, and we're going to follow our flight path now. So we're following this up, we're going to get to those branches, and we're going to see how strong is the wind here. 1, so in that direction, we're going to take our token, which has been following it up to this point, and we're going to blow it in that direction at that strength. And now it's going to finish its flight path. Discs that are going through a wind adjustment pass through passable objects, meaning that even though there would have been an interaction normally, the wind adjustment happens first. So in an example like this, let's say I'm throwing and our disc gets to the wind hex. Now the wind hex is high and on a tree branch, so normally that would interact, but we get to do the wind adjustment first. Blowing it this way, so blew the whole thing this way, and now it's going to finish its flight path. Did not interact with the tree branch, even though it was on it. Wind adjustment happens first. Now, if we were in another situation, let's say, this is a difficult example to explain with that, but let's say we're here and we rolled here. Let's say the wind was blowing us in this direction. We had a wind adjustment and it adjusted into the branches. Well, now the wind adjustment's over and our disc is on the branches and it's high, so that is when the interaction with this would happen. The exception here is with the basket. So if this was a throw you were trying to make, you get to choose to interact with the basket before the wind adjustment happens. But it could have also come here, perhaps it adjusted forward, and now you can interact with the basket as well. So interactions with the basket can happen prior to or after a wind adjustment. There is no adjusting, there's no passing through the base of a tall rock. So that's when I said a wind adjustment passes through passable objects. The base of a tall rock, large rock, is not passable. So in this scenario, unless the wind adjustment was away from the rock, if it had to go through the rock in this fashion, it would still interact with the base of the large rock and just land one space back. There are scenarios where you could interact with the basket twice in one throw. For example, with a mid-range throw here, we would have a chance to chain in, but there is a roll in which the disc misses the basket and continues on its flight path. So in this scenario, let's imagine there's some headwind here. We had passed the basket, we got here, and we had some wind strength that brought the disc backwards one. You now get to roll to see if you chain in again. And then if not, we follow the rules on what happens as a result of the chain in attempt or the mid-range, and then finish the flight path. So with coarse wind, if you were to roll a red, that is the strength of 2. So in this scenario where the wind's blowing this way, and your disc got up to here, you rolled a red, it's now going to blow you 1, 2 spaces before the wind adjustment is over and your disc continues on its flight. So your disc can glance off of obstacles in random directions before carrying on with their flight path. That can happen with small rocks, medium rocks, trees, and the basket. Let's look at how that would work. So this is your ricochet spinner down here. Let's say I've made this throw. I was going to interact with this tree. You can see I've got wind blowing up this direction and I'm thinking it's going to save me, but I roll 0 wind And now I'm interacting with this tree. Let's say I'm interacting with the tree and I rolled, I believe it's a 3. So a 3, it ricochets, okay? So now we're going to spin this and figure out which direction did it ricochet. Oh, it's going forward. And how hard did it ricochet? None at all. Okay, good to know. In this situation, we've now resolved that interaction and it's going to continue on and land in the drink. But let's say it was a red. Let's say we ricocheted by 2 off of the top of that tree. So now your disc and the flight path in that position go up 2. And now it's going to continue on its flight path. Also landing in the drink, but in a different direction. So with a ricochet, if you are to ricochet in the exact opposite direction that your disc was flying, your disc is going to come to a stop after the ricochet. It is not going to finish the flight path. So let's ignore the wind for this example. We get to the medium rock here. We spun the ricochet and it's heading down, and we were heading the exact opposite direction. You would roll this. Let's say we rolled a 1. You're going to finish that ricochet, 1 back, and you're going to stop right here. If it was 2 back, you would have knocked 2 back, stopped right there, landed in the water, and as we know, we passed over the top point of entry. We were right here for your next throw. And that's how ricochets work. You can choose to putt once you are inside the yellow circle. That's not as simple as it sounds, though. You have a few rules here. You're going to be rolling a single 6-sided dice, and you need to roll the amount of spaces to the basket or higher to get it in. What line are you going to take? You choose the line you're going to take to the basket with your finger. So let's say you've landed here. You go, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I need a 3 or higher to get it in from here. Now, if I landed on the tall grass, any obstacle that you're standing on or is in between you and the basket on the line you've chosen is -1 to your roll. So whereas this is 1, 2, 3, because I'm on the grass, I'm actually going to need a 4 or higher to score. If you're throwing over water, that is also going to affect your throw. So 1, 2, 3, 4, you are going to need an extra 1 because of that extra pressure you feel from throwing over the water. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're going to need a 5 or higher here. You can also choose to use a flight path token even though you're in the putting zone. So maybe you don't want to deal with that and you say, you know what, I think I found a line in which I can get this in. This is a poor example, but let's say we were here. You could putt, but you say, you know what, I would like to, I don't know, maybe you're the bomber and you say, I'd like to use my ability to throw 1 further, and I'm going to try for an approach chain in. So that's an option as well. The tap-in circle is the same rules as putting, except you've got a 6-sided dice. You're going to roll at least a 1. So if you've landed here, there's no roll required. It's just take an extra stroke and get it in. However, in a situation like this, you're on the tall grass. Technically, that's a 2 to get it in. 1 plus that grass is a -1 to your roll. So that'll require 2. So you're still going to have to roll if you're in the tap-in circle, but you're standing on an obstacle. So chaining in is when your disc interacts with the basket on a flight path rather than when you're putting. The rules for what happens during a chain in are different depending on whether you did it with an approach disc, a mid-range disc, or a driver disc. Follow the directions on the instructions, and the results will change based on what happened with your roll. Ricochets, I'll explain. So if it's a ricochet, it's a ricochet. If it lands on the basket hex, it lands right on the basket hex but does not go in. If it says score, that means you got it in. Congratulations.
And if it says the disc misses the basket and continues on its flight path, treat it as though it was a tree and you rolled a 6. To completely ignore it and just continue on your flight path. That can be really scary because you might have a flight path that lets you chain in, but the consequences of missing could have it going into out of bounds or worse. So keep that in mind. So the Trailblazer's ability is Scramble Hawk. And what that says is when you spend a bag token or chain token, roll a 6-sided dice. If you roll a 5 or a 6, you get to keep the token that you just spent. Now this roll cannot be modified. Let me give you an example. So let's say I was making this throw here, and I wanted to spend a bag token to throw a low throw. And if you guys check the rules, you'll see that throwing a low throw changes all the H's to L's, and we'll lose the last 2 hexes of our flight path. So essentially I'm throwing to here. Now that's going to cost a bag token to do. Now when I declare that I've spent it, I'm going to grab a 6-sided dice and roll it. I did not roll a 5 or a 6, so that token remains spent and I don't get it back. But if I had rolled a 5 or a 6, that gets put back into my bag. I recommend this card for experienced players who have a really good understanding of when to use their tokens. The approachable player profile card has the ability of a placement shot. Before throwing, you may remove the first or last hex of your flight path. If you remove the first one, you choose whether the new hex of the flight path is high or low. Let me give you an example. So for example, with the approachable ability, I can choose to either remove the last flight of my flight path to have it land here, or I can remove the first hex of my flight path, which looks like throwing it from here instead. So that's the ability of the placement shot. In that situation, that new first hex, I get to decide whether that's high or low. The Wind Wizard's ability is Divine Gusts, which is once on your throw, you may adjust the outcome of a wind adjustment by 1. Now when I say 1, the chains dice is yellow, blue, and red. Red being 2, yellow being 1, and blue being 0. So when I say adjust by 1, if you were to roll a blue, you could change it to a yellow. If you were to roll a red, you could change it to a yellow. If you were to roll a yellow, you could change it to a red or a blue. That's what you need to understand. If you're throwing a mid-range, there's only 1 wind adjustment on that space, and so that's where you could do that. If you're throwing a driver, there are 2 wind adjustments on those flight paths, so you'd have to choose which one to do the adjustment on. You can choose at the time of the wind adjustment whether you're going to do it or not, but once you've done one, you can't do another. In this example, we're trying to chain in right over here. However, we really need, in order for this to go in and not go off to the side or what have you, we need this to do what we need it to do. So let's say I've committed to my throw and I'm following this up. When I get to that wind adjustment hex, I'm going to roll the dice, the chains dice. Now, it was the 0, which is what I needed. But if it was a yellow, I could have adjusted it to a 0 to make sure it didn't move at all, and I could continue on and attempt that roll for chain in. That's good. The machine's player ability is Disc Missile, +3 to all chain in rolls. In this example, we have a shot lined up. Let's imagine that we've rolled our wind adjustment and there's no wind. Now I'm coming in and I'm now interacting with the basket. I'm throwing a mid-range, and we know that we need a certain number. We're going to refer to the rules here for a chain in. So chaining in, you're going to need a 5 or 6 to score. So I rolled a 2, which typically would not be a favorable result, but with that +3, 3, 4, 5, I am going to now have hit the number I needed to get my chaining with a mid-range. So that's the power of the machine. The sniper's player ability is no casualties. Now before throwing, you may identify a single tree, bush, or rock, now that's small or medium rocks, not large rocks, to ignore this throw. So in this example, I've lined up a throw that's heading towards the basket, but there is a set of small rocks in the way. I can declare, before I commit to my throw, before I say throwing, I will ignore those small rocks. And so if my wind happens to not adjust me in the direction I need, and I wind up coming over here, I can ignore that, and I will safely make my full distance throw. If the obstacle I chose to ignore was a tree, that applies to the trunk and the branches. So in this throw, if I was to not have wind, I could ignore the trunk and branches and make that full distance flight path. So the bomber's player ability is called Crushed, and that's before throwing, you can add 1 hex before the first hex of your flight path, and you choose whether it's high or low. That's going to give you the extra distance that you need to make incredible shots. Let's have a look. So I'm outside the circle, I'm having to use a flight path, and I'm trying to chain in. This isn't going to quite make it there, but if I use the Crushed ability, I get to add a hex onto the beginning of my flight path, just like that. So now I'm getting that extra distance I wanted, clearing those rocks, and I have that opportunity for a chain in. And that's the Crushed ability. With the Florida Gators course condition card, if you throw a disc into the water on this hole, you're going to lose 1 chain token or 2 bag tokens. In this example, I've thrown a disc that comes to rest in the water. So it's now my decision as to whether I discard 1 chain token or 2 bag tokens. Okay, this one is called Under Construction. Now this comes into effect before we start the hole. You're going to number the T-pads and roll the dice until one of these numbers are rolled. That T-pad is, well, under construction. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 2. This one is not available. You're going to have to choose between these 2 for this hole. With the overgrown course condition card, fairway is now tall grass, and tall grass is now bushes. Now everyone starts this hole with another bag token, unless you have the max amount of them, then you don't. But if you look at this, all this green area is now tall grass, and this entire tall grass section are now treated as bushes. With the high winds course condition card, course wind is max speed for the entire hole. Now you're all going to start this hole with another bag token, unless you have the max already. But basically we're saying you don't have to roll this. Treat it as though it was rolled for red every time there's a wind adjustment. Swirling winds says determine new course wind every throw before throwing, plus 1 bag token. So we're going to all start this hole with an additional bag token. Of course, unless you have the max, then you don't get another one. But everyone's tee shot, everyone's up shot, every single shot, you're going to reach over and you're going to find out what the new course wind is. But you get to find that out before committing to your throw. That applies for the first player's tee shot as well. And that's how swirling winds works. So with a drought, hexes 2 spaces into the water are now tall grass. No bag tokens can be used on this hole. On this course, well, hexes 2 spaces into the water really accounts for all of the water on this hole, because that's 2 spaces in from every side. So all of the water would dry up on this hole and would be replaced with tall grass. With a flash flood, the opposite is true. Bodies of water spread 1 hex in every direction, plus 1 chain token. So now you're all going to gain a chain token, unless you have the max of 3. So in this situation, this water is now water all the way around. With Cliffside Course, it's similar to Florida Gators, except rather than related to water, it's related to out of bounds. If you throw your disc out of bounds on this hole, lose 1 chain token or 2 bag tokens. So in the event that you got an unlucky ricochet or something, and your disc was to come out to rest out of bounds, choose 1 of these or 2 of these to discard. Freshly mowed makes it so that the tall grass is now fairway. So you can treat all the tall grass the same as this. Bushes have also been trimmed, so you can treat the bushes as though they're tall grass. No tokens can be used on this hole. Basically, we're saying, look, we made it easier for you, no excuses. And that's how the course condition cards work. All of your bag tokens are stored in your Squatch bag. If you spend a token, you can spend it for a variety of reasons, okay? You can also gain them back. So I'm going to spend a bag token, and one way I can use it is to adjust the roll of a single 6-sided dice by up to 2. So in an example, I was putting, I needed a 1, 2, 3. I rolled a 1. I can retroactively spend that bag token to adjust my roll to a 3 and make that shot. The way that you earn another use of a bag token is to adjust the direction of a spin by 1. For example, missed putts or ricochets. So in this example, I've come up against a medium-sized rock. I've spun for the ricochet spinner, and I've rolled for the strength of it. It is straight back, and it's heading to the drink. I can spend a bag token to adjust the direction of that ricochet by 1, and now instead of heading 2 back into the drink, it's heading 2 over and landing in the bushes. Another way a bag token could be spent is to throw a high throw or a low throw. With a high throw, you're throwing the disc high and you're losing some distance. So what that looks like is you're going to lose the first 2 spaces of your flight path, but now all of these are high, every single one of them. So you can change all the L's to H's, and that's how you treat that throw. Alternatively, you could spend that bag token to throw a low throw, in which case the last 2 spaces of the flight path are removed, and every H is changed to an L. So this would be low all the way through. You can see how that really becomes a placement shot as we miss the tree top and land here. Again, ignoring the wind in this example. Another thing you can do with the bag token is affect the outcome of the chains dice by 1. We've talked about that before. If you rolled a blue, you could change it to a yellow. If you rolled a red, you could change it to a yellow. If you rolled a yellow, you could change it to a blue or a red. And finally, you could spend a bag token to interact with an obstacle on your flight path that you normally wouldn't have. So in this example, let's ignore the wind in this example, okay? So we could be making our way along this flight path. We'll ignore the wind in this example. We'll get to this tall grass. Now, typically we would not interact with that grass until here, but we can spend that bag token to say, I threw it and it interacted with that tall grass, so it got stuck there. Meaning you landed here instead of over here, stuck in the bush. If you get 1 under par on a hole, that earns you 1 token to put back in your bag. So if you spend your bag tokens wisely and are able to get birdies, you regenerate a token by getting a birdie. And that's how you do your token management throughout the game. Chain tokens are stored in the basket on your player profile card. They can be spent only 1 chain token per throw, just like bag tokens, only 1 bag token per throw. Now you could spend 1 chain token and 1 bag token in a throw. I hope you're making a magnificent shot if you to make that decision. Let's talk about different ways to use chain tokens. So in this example, you can throw what's called a Heiser bomb to clear all obstacles. You can only do that with an approach flight path, so anyone with the A. And in this example, we have a line to the basket. There's a tree in the way. I could spend a chain token to throw high with an approach disc, ignore all the obstacles, and interact with that basket for a chain in. Another throw that's available is a skip shot. So on the hex that your flight path would let the disc come to rest, you can ricochet in the direction that the disc was last traveling. This also allows you to skip off the water. So in this example, you make this throw, your disc follows along this flight path, it would come to rest here, but you spend that chain token, and now it's a ricochet in the direction that the disc was last traveling, which is this direction, and you're going to roll for strength. You've got that one. You get that tiny little 1 space skip, and you're on dry land. That can be an incredible play, especially for getting extra distance near the basket for a skip in. Absolutely possible. You can use this very cleverly in this game. And the third way to use a chain token is to decide the outcome of the chains dice roll. You have to commit to spending the chain token before rolling this. You can't do it retroactively. You can earn chain tokens in this game by getting 2 or more under par. So on a par 4, you would need to get it in 2 to earn a chain token. So spend those chain tokens wisely. You don't have very many of them, and pull off magnificent shots to earn them back. So this is a great game to play with your family as well. It's really easy to introduce new players, young players, to the sport of disc golf with chains. So I'd love to see my son, Phoenix, playing a hole. Let's have a look. We don't have to play with all of the different rules. Phoenix, do you think maybe we don't play with these guys?
Okay.
And maybe we won't play with the weird ones that change the way the hole looks, the course condition cards?
Oh yeah, like these.
Yeah, we'll leave those alone. We can still play with window if you want.
Oh yeah.
Cool. All right. You know the drill. We're trying to get it in the basket, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do we want to start with?
Something's wrong. That's good. Maybe this one. So I can start with one of these.
Cool. And do you remember what we say to commit to the throw?
What?
Throw in.
1.
Yeah. Cool. Phoenix chose that. Can you spin the wind? Awesome. That's the wind we've got this whole time. So let's have your disc follow it up. You get to the blue one, and now you can roll the dice. Okay, so it's blowing backwards, but it blew no spaces backwards, so you get to keep going forward. You're going to land on the grass, because there's grass under your grass hex.
Oh, well, then I want.
It didn't quite make it all the way.
Oh.
That's all right. Let's move this out of the way. This is your first shot. All right. 1 stroke.
You want to put this to a 1 so you know how far you got?
Yeah.
All right. I see you've got a big patch of trees to get through. That's going to be a tough one. You might even have to go up that way to get around them. I'm not sure.
Won't it be possible for me to do like this? Just
Yeah.
head over?
We can give that a try. I see there is a tree branch in front of you, but I'm hoping for a really good roll.
Yeah. His high chance I fall in the water because.
Yeah. Oh, also, we actually lose the first space of our flight path because we're on the grass. So it'll actually throw as if it was like this, which is actually really good news because now it's high on the tree trunk.
Okay.
Can we give it a try?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Do the wind?
the wind is going to stay the same actually.
No.
Yeah.
It's going to be.
It's going down. Why don't you roll that? We'll get up to the branch here, or to the tree trunk.
Mm-hmm.
Let's roll that dice.
This?
Yep. Ah, 1. So the whole thing goes. And now it's an H over the tree trunk, so you're safe. And now it's going to go around the tree trunk. Go to there. Ah, another roll for the wind.
So for
The wind stays the same direction.
Oh.
We're just going to figure out how strong it is. None at all. Blue is none. 0. So where's it going next? Down to there. So I see there's an L. So that's a tree trunk. And there's a tree trunk there. Oh. I think we're going to have to roll this, one of these guys, to figure out what happens when it hits the tree. Ah, it just lands right there on the trunk hex. Ta-da! So your second shot, you've made it all the way up here. That's awesome. This is a par 5. You've only made 2 throws. I'm going to put this back for you. What is your next plan of attack?
I could head in for now. That won't do.
Oh, you went with one that goes to the left more. I like that decision. Whoa, that's crazy.
Yep.
Okay. You're going to commit to that throw? Okay, let's see what happens. So it's low with the tree branches there, so it misses that. Goes up to the wind. So let's find out how strong the wind is blowing by rolling the dice.
This?
Yeah. Ooh, red. So that was here. Let's put it on top. The wind blew it back 1, 2 spaces. Now let's follow it some more. Dun dun dun. Roll again.
Please be like forwards or none.
I know, right? Hey, it's none. Good. So where does it land?
Here?
Yeah, right at the end. Awesome. You got there in 3 throws. And how many, what kind of a roll of the dice do you need to get it into the basket? How many spaces away?
2.
Are you going to go straight in? Why don't you roll that and see how you do?
Yes?
Yep. You got it in. You needed just 2 or higher. You got a 3. You got it in 4 throws. Because that was 3 and then 4. Ching. And it was a par 5. So you got a birdie. And if we were playing with these tokens, you would have earned 1. And that goes back 1 more. So you're 1 more under par than you were before. How did that go?
Good.
Is that fun?
Yeah.
Good job. Yeah, really fun to introduce this to your kids and be able to talk about how discs fly.
And Snowball can help too.
Everyone, thank you so much for checking out the Teach and learning the game. I'm looking forward to all of your unboxing videos and your reviews. Be sure to upload those to Board Game Geek because we need to get the word out there. We need to grow the sport of disc golf, and that is what this is for. So enjoy. I hope you have amazing matches, amazing memories, great throws. Happy holidays.